our stakeholders in the areas that we are continuously engaging with. So this is an opportunity for you to learn more about either histories, art, activism, and in this purpose, a business perspective and what's going on. The other thing is Metro does less of the talking during these conversations and more of the listening. We really want you to be engaged with the conversation that you're about to have today with an amazing speaker that we'll be introducing shortly. So if you're here to get an update on a project in the San Fernando Valley, we apologize. It's really just that time for you to learn more and meet someone from the San Fernando Valley. But we do have some colleagues here from the Valley that you can be able to connect with that would be happy to provide you that update after this conversation. Let me share my screen so I can tell you how this is going to go today. All right, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. Yes. Do I see a nod? Okay, great. So before we begin, just wanted to provide you with some housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded, so if you want to share this meeting with any of your colleagues afterwards, you're more than happy to. We'll be emailing this out for all of you that signed up. If you're joining by computer or phone, you are muted, but that doesn't mean you can't be engaged with us. You can do so via chat. And there will be an opportunity to answer questions from the chat and also provide your answers verbally after our speaker has presented. That's, if you're not familiar with Zoom, that's an opportunity and a way for you to stay engaged via chat. And then if you do have a question during that time when we open up for Q&A, just raise your hand and then I will call on you afterwards and then we'll unmute you to allow you to ask your questions. Also, we did see that there are some folks that asked for translation. So there is that option available for you. If you click on the bottom, like kind of like a globe icon, you'll see an opportunity for you to listen in Spanish. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Sonya to just, or actually my colleagues to introduce themselves and then introduce our speaker for today. So I'll turn it over to Karen and Tito.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tito Corona, along with my colleague Karen Swift. We are your San Fernando Valley representatives. And as Michael said, today's not about Metro, it's actually about the guests and people that we've met in our journey working in San Fernando Valley. And this person that we're about to introduce was one of those persons that we recently met that, you know, the energy and everything about Sonya is great. You'll see in the presentation today. Once we met her, we knew, okay, we have to introduce Sonya to everybody else in the Metro family and everyone who's watching today. So with that, let me talk a little bit about Sonya Kay Blake. She's the president and CEO of the Valley Economic Alliance, based in Sherman Oaks. In this capacity, she is a leading catalyst facilitating economic development in the San Fernando Valley, a vital and burgeoning region in the city of Los Angeles, comprising of 5 cities, which is 1.9 million residents and 64,000 businesses. The Alliance's activities include promoting business vitality, efficient mobility, workshop development, affordable housing, and other aspects of establishing and maintaining livable, sustainable, and equitable communities. Prior to her leadership at the Alliance, Sonya served as Director of Community Businesses in Mayor Eric Garcetti's Office of Economic Development, where she played a role in the city's rollout of an $11 million small business emergency microloan program in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. She also helped Mayor Garcetti launch entrepreneurship training programs, formulate the economic development package of the city's community development block grant, and undertake citywide community revitalization efforts. And aside from her personal background, she also graduated from Yale University and UCLA Graduate School of Management. She has lived in Valley Glen since 2003 with her husband, Stephen, and has 3 school-aged children. She can be reached at the Valley Economic Alliance at thevalley.net. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce today's Community Conversations guest, Ms. Sonya Kay Blake.
Thank you, Tito. I appreciate that. And I just want to thank Metro, Tito, Karen, Michael for inviting me to be with you all today. And I want to thank all of you for being here because there's no more important time than now for us to build community and to have conversations. So I love that we get to do this today. I am zooming in from Sherman Oaks, California, and I'd love to see in the chat, where are you zooming in from? Just let us know where you're calling from and tuning in from, because we want to create community, and we have new ways of doing that these days. And so this is a great way. So it's so much fun to see when we see all the folks just engaging. Monica, hey Monica, Susan, Lillian, Sarah, great to see you all. Lily Ortiz, hello. All right, and everyone. So I'd love to go to my first slide and we'll jump right in. Want to leave a lot of time in the end for some Q&A. If I leave anything untouched, we can circle back at the end. I love that we've got folks tuning in from all over. This is very cool. Welcome everyone. So today I'm very excited to share with you about Main Street San Fernando Valley, Sustainable Economic Futures. And I want to start by telling you a little bit about the Valley Economic Alliance. So our alliance was founded in the wake of the Northridge earthquake. We are no stranger to disasters and disaster recovery. We are a catalyst for resiliency and recovery whenever we have emergencies here in the San Fernando Valley. And in particular, we look at how we can help our economy to recover in the wake of disasters. So about the Alliance, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We serve 5 member cities. So the San Fernando Valley region of the city of Los Angeles, as well as the city of San Fernando, Burbank, Calabasas, and Glendale. Our initiatives include economic development. So that means we undertake projects that help businesses to start and grow in the San Fernando Valley. Those may be businesses from low to moderate income areas, disadvantaged businesses, to help them connect with resources, as well as our larger businesses that we want to attract to the Valley. We work with commercial brokers looking at commercial spaces that are vacant and available, where we can attract businesses, where we can retain businesses to keep and create businesses here in the Valley region. We also undertake education and workforce development. So we're a very strong player in interfacing with our educational system. In fact, just spoke with some teachers from LAUSD on how they can teach the principles of entrepreneurship in the classroom and come alongside their business teachers to make sure that every student understands how they can be an entrepreneur in whatever it is that they do. So education, as well as workforce development. One of the very important aspects of attracting a business to a region is how can they connect with potential employees, and how qualified is the workforce, how trained is the workforce. So we work with our local community colleges and universities to help connect our residents with training programs to make them very qualified workers to help meet the needs of businesses that want to grow in the area. And then third and finally, we have an initiative on livable and sustainable communities. So that entails all the other quality of life issues that impact whether or not a business wants to locate in the Valley. It could be affordable housing, environmental sustainability, transportation infrastructure, like what Metro is doing throughout the Valley region. It could be access to health care and healthy food, public safety and sanitation. These are all quality of life issues that really impact the economic environment. Next slide, please. So what is economic development? Let's get into that a little bit. Some say that it's one big project that brings many good paying jobs. So like an Amazon, everybody wants to attract the next Amazon, right? Some cities do, some cities don't. Or Facebook, or growing businesses you know that are growing. They're in a technology business or industry, for example, biotech. A lot of countries, a lot of cities, a lot of municipalities, they want to attract one large project as a way of promoting economic development. But what about many small projects put together? Is Is economic development a lot of small things done very well in a particular geographic region, say for example Magnolia Park in Burbank, one of our member cities? What is economic development? Well, as you may have guessed, the answer of course is yes. It is both. It is large projects, it is doing a lot of small things in a project area very well to build jobs, to create vibrant communities, and it really is a symbiotic ecosystem among large, medium-sized, and small projects put together. Okay, so next slide, please. So before we go forward and talk about sustainable futures for our main streets, let's just look back a little bit on the history and a historical look at some of our main streets. And it's always so charming to look back and see some of these locations. So Tujunga, Commerce Avenue in Tujunga, you'll see on the upper left-hand side, looking up from Foothill in the 20s. And you see the characteristic main street. And when you think about a small town, there's a main street where people congregate, where commerce can be done. And so our histories of main streets is a long-standing history and a rich history. Image number 2 in the lower left is Canoga Park, Sherman Way on Canoga Park in the 1920s. And you can see the electrical poles down the center of the street, as well as there were 2 railroad tracks going in either direction, and then some of the first lamp posts on the streets there. Image number 3 in the upper right-hand corner is a Sunland main shopping street in the 60s, and you can see the evolution of the cars and the signage of the buildings, and things are getting more sophisticated, but still a very far cry from the personality and the flavor of our main streets today. But this is the historical look at where we're coming from. And then of course, image number 4 in the lower right, we've got some of the tract housing built in the post-war era, where orchards and ranches gave way to some of the housing and the aerospace companies that epitomize America's suburb, as the San Fernando Valley was once known. Next slide, please. So then looking ahead, so as we move out of that post-war era, what's interesting, I think, about the heyday of the Valley is the main streets and the commerce taking place, and the sights and the sounds and the smells and the experiences of our main streets historically. Our suburb, San Fernando Valley as a suburb, a utopian society where there's hope and promise. And at least for some of our citizens. As many of us know, there were housing covenants that concentrated African Americans, for example, in the area of Pacoima for some time, where 90% of the African American population was concentrated in Pacoima. And the diversity of the region has grown exponentially since those days. And another trend that has taken place since those days post-war is urbanization and urban growth. Urbanization is the proportion of people moving to our city areas, and then urban growth, of course, is the absolute numbers of people living in the cities. And meanwhile, there's been disinvestment in our urban areas and somewhat of a decline of the building stock. So what happens with that? What happens in the 60s and 70s is the rise of the shopping mall. And there's a move away from our historical main streets to these spaces. In 1956, it was Austrian architect Victor Gruen who designed Southdale Center in Edina, Minnesota as the first American indoor mall. It was modeled on Vienna walkability. So walkabilities of a European city and bringing that indoors with artwork, etc. And what is a mall? A mall is an indoor space with anchor stores on either end, gigantic parking lots, removed back from the street, Lots of an air-conditioned, controlled environment with ample parking, a food court. It's the ultimate comfort and convenience in the shopping experience. And so this is when people moved away from the traditional main streets into these convenient spaces with our car culture, which caused us to go and prefer to park in a nice spacious parking lot and have these convenient spaces. So let's take a look at some of the malls in the San Fernando Valley region. We've got the Westfield Fashion Square, opened in 1962 in Sherman Oaks, Van Nuys, on 2 floors, 850,000 square feet of space, 140 stores with a couple of anchor stores. We've got the Glendale Galleria pictured, opened in 1976. 1.6 million square feet of space. So these are large, sprawling spaces where you can walk and view and have these experiences. And it kind of simulates the Main Street experience, but it's pulled away from that in a more controlled environment. Of course, we have our Northridge Fashion Center, opened in 1971. With theaters as well, filming movie theaters there. And then the Sherman Oaks Galleria, opened in 1980, and Westfield Topanga opened in 1964. By the way, the Sherman Oaks Galleria opened in 80, of course, popularized by the teenage mall culture in the 1982 satirical song Valley Girl by Frank Zappa and his daughter Moon Zappa, and was also the location of the 1982 film Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So this is another era of shopping in the 80s, and Valley culture came to the fore at that point. So at this time, I'd love to do a poll. If we can throw up the poll, Michael,
Yes.
and we can just, oh, do we have a poll, or shall we do in the chat? If we have a poll, we're gonna just take a little pulse from the folks participating and see which of these malls do you tend to visit most?
So, Sonia, I apologize. It's not working on my end.
Oh, that's
Technology,
no problem.
but maybe we can ask via chat.
Well, you know what? Let me see if I can launch it from my end.
Okay, great.
Let's see. Are folks seeing the poll now? Which San Fernando Valley mall, I see some folks are voting, do you tend to visit most often, if at all? And it's kind of fun to take a look. It'll be interesting to see. My closest neighborhood mall is Westfield Fashion Square, actually. Just popped over there yesterday, in fact, and I'm seeing there's a really nice spread between all the different mall areas. And some of our folks calling into here are just not into malls. Okay, I get that. They're just not into malls, which makes sense because the topic of our conversation really isn't about malls. It's about Main Street. But it's kind of interesting how some of us are just not into malls, and then some of us are patronizing Westfield Fashion Square, Glendale Galleria at about in proportion to each other, followed by Westfield Topanga and Northridge Fashion Center. So here I'll just share results so that folks can see what we're talking about here. And that's just kind of, thanks everyone who participated in that. So moving ahead in history, next slide, please. The next step is, so that's not the end of the story, right? The malls. And we know that, you know, malls are not as popular as they were in the 80s necessarily. And so what happened? Their developers tended to overbuild malls. They were so popular at one time. In 2017, there were approximately 116,000 shopping malls in the US, according to Statista.com. So malls were overbuilt and they began to compete so much with each other, we started to see a decline of the mall. Not only that, with the rise of online shopping, that was an even more ultimate convenient shopping experience, and that also impacted the closure of malls. So far, 69% of Americans shop online, 25% at least once per month, and it's projected to hit 91% of the population by 2023. So online shopping is one factor which has really contributed to moving away from the malls. But what did it devolve into? So there's a devolution of the mall into lifestyle centers. It's kind of the new iteration of the mall. Memphis developers Pogue and McEwen coined the phrase in the late 1980s and emerged in the late 1990s as boutique malls located primarily in affluent suburban areas. And they offer experiences. Once again, we're going outdoor, we're including indoor and outdoor areas, and it's simulating the experience of the Main Street. So there's been kind of a nostalgia and wanting to kind of get back to Main Street, but without losing the convenience of the controlled environment. So these lifestyle centers, they offer sights and sounds and smells that are highly choreographed and have these areas, Instagrammable areas, where you can go into, in front of a mural and you can do a selfie with friends or whatever would have you, and fountains and activities for kids and things like that. Here we have pictured the Commons at Calabasas opened in 1988, the Americana at Brand on the right-hand side in 2008, and the Village at Westfield Topanga in 2015, which added on to the mall with this lifestyle center. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and throw up the next poll, if I see it. No, I think I only see, oh, here's polling number 2. Okay, so let's talk a little bit here about where would you rather shop? And you can choose more than one, but where would you rather shop? Okay, a Main Street, an indoor mall, a lifestyle center, or online? And of course, some folks will have a combination of those, and maybe I should have put an other category because there are other options, I suppose. But these are kind of the biggies, the main ones. And so the folks we have on the line with us today, of course, are fans of Main Street. Main Streets have so much to offer. And then secondly, it looks like online is a very popular option as well, followed by these lifestyle centers, which are even more popular than the traditional indoor mall. So I'll just share the results so folks can see what we have. And thank you again so much for participating in that poll. So next slide, please. So let's get to the good stuff and why Main Streets and the charm and some of the benefits of Main Street in terms of shopping options. The multiplier effect, the economic multiplier effect. Private research firm Civic Economics conducted a study for the city of Austin, Texas, which showed an independent reseller, a bookseller, Book People, and a music seller, Waterloo Records, returned more than 3 times as much money to the local economy, 3 times, as a proposed Borders book and music outlet would. So 3 times more money recirculated in the local economy when you look at the revenues, the dollars that were spent at the independently owned bookseller and music outlet. Those results have been mirrored by subsequent studies, each showing a much greater local multiplier effect for spending at independent businesses. So those studies measured the direct and the indirect impacts to determine the base level local economic activity of a purchase made at a chain and a local independent business. And with like with many things, you know, it takes an ecosystem of large businesses and small businesses, but it's really important for us to consider how the benefit of buying local, because there's a multiplier effect, and that ends up creating jobs in our local community and building our local economy. But that's not the only benefit. It's also more sustainable. So there's less shipping that's needed, less trucks driving on the road, less fuel being burned, there's less packaging materials created, less packaging materials and refuse put into landfills. So overall, purchasing local and our main streets is also more sustainable. And thirdly, and not least importantly, is the interpersonal relationship building that takes place on our local main streets. When local residents regularly patronize local businesses, relationships develop. And people create neighborhoods and begin to care for and take care of one another in a way that we've really understood more and more poignantly today is very, very important for us to have the interpersonal relationships in our neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So looking at our local main streets here in the San Fernando Valley region, I just want to point out some of them and want you to take a look at what's happening on these streets, what's there and what's not there. Looking in the upper left, we'll go from left to right, top to bottom. So in the upper left, you'll see Maclay in the city of San Fernando. And looking at some of the development that's happening there, some of the new stores, look at the personality of the street. You've got these attractive signage with store signage and restaurant signage. You've got some greenery with the trees. You've got a variety of large store signages with personality and premium branding. So not inexpensive, low quality looking signage, but high quality looking branded premium signage on the storefronts. And then you have a charming looking lamppost and wide, clean sidewalks. Next to the right, we've got Magnolia in Valley Village. And here we've got another look. You've got some of the parking available there. You can see available parking to patronize these shops. You've got some personality in the architecture. The rooftops look kind of like they have some personality and flavor. And then you've got the post office, which has kind of a castle motif going as well. The next one down in the lower left-hand side, we've got Tahunga in Valley Village. So here we've got some signage coming off of the storefronts, a charming awning with a charming font that's used, portrait of a bookstore. We've got greenery, sidewalk seatings, a trash receptacle to make sure that things stay fresh and clean, a really charming fence. Additional seating going down the row. What you can't see here is just outside the frame to the right is a water bowl for dogs and a charming table with a personality and flavor on a beautiful mosaic table on the sidewalk. I'll start moving more quickly here. In the center, we have Chatsworth in Granada Hills, and looking at what's there and looking at the storefronts there and comparatively looking at the different elements that are there or aren't there. We do have a lamppost, we have some of the greenery, the treenage, we have trees, we have some signage there. And we can kind of see the difference, the different kinds of stores that are there and the different personality and look and feel of our different main streets. To the right of that, we've got Van Nuys Boulevard in Van Nuys, a bike shop with signage out front. There's a banner to attract attention, a nice wide, clean sidewalks, and some wayfinding signage to help people find their way. Then in the bottom center, we've got Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks. More awnings, signage, trees, sidewalk seating, umbrellas. And then finally in the lower right, we see Lancashire in North Hollywood with the Federal Bar has kind of a nostalgic signage out front, and then you see an awning, some potted plants, etc. Next slide, please. So let's analyze somewhat what are the ingredients, the elements for these main streets and what creates the personality and the charm of main streets. So there are three elements, essentially. The elements fall into three categories. There are the physical attributes of the space, the activities and experiences taking place, they're activating the spaces, and then there's investment. So looking at the physical attributes, zoning is one of the core elements, of course, to creating a main street. and the personality of that street and how it operates. So some main streets, many main streets near residential can benefit from the residents in the nearby area patronizing that area and walking down. And walkability is a really important element because that creates part of the charm. So there's parking close by or near a neighborhood so that you'll have lots of walking and people just strolling around the area, which lends to that personality. The mix of the commercial customers, the mix of, if it's not near residential, near a commercial area, so that you can have a mix of commercial customers coming through, so that there's always a stream of activity. So what creates for a successful main street, of course, is the foot traffic, so that you have the businesses being patronized and you have a sense of activity and desirability. People want to be in that space and they're patronizing the area. Zoning also determines the size of the units. So through zoning, we can, or our regulatory agencies can determine if a space is going to be limited to 3,000 square feet or smaller, then it's going to be more conducive to creating a main street area rather than one of the larger businesses moving in. So zoning is a key element of where main streets can locate and where they can thrive. Also, affordable rent. So when you start to see some migration of businesses out of areas is when they begin to get priced out. So there is this cycle of creative businesses, of new business owners taking a chance on an area where it's affordable. They start the business, they create part of the local flavor, and then the rents become out of reach and they need to move out, and then other kinds of businesses move in. So there's this flux. But when rents are affordable, then you can keep those creative businesses, the new businesses coming in that have different personalities and different kinds of product mixes that they bring. So affordable rent is one of the keys. Parking as well, the appropriateness of parking, that the time on the meters is the right amount of time for the type of activity there. So shorter time limits, maybe near a dry cleaner, longer time limits for a restaurant where you have folks lingering for longer periods of time. And all these things can be flexible. So with zoning or with parking, with parking, we can appeal to the Department of Transportation for more appropriate parking when the residents and the business owners get together and make known what would be most conducive for their main street. Mobility options as well, of course, access to public transportation, to the metro, and to biking infrastructure, and metro bikes or bike racks and things like that. Really create more activity to be able to have patrons come into the area. The landscaping, whether it be the landscaping just outside of the business or potted plants and window boxes that create that charm. A theme or personality. For some of the areas, of course, they have maybe an artistic theme going, things like that. Wayfinding signage like you'll find in Granada Hills. You are now entering Granada Hills, and charming signage that points people to where they can park and where they can find certain amenities. Also adds to the theme of our main streets. Seating, outdoor seating, as well as fountains and clock towers and all these wonderful little kind of like jewelry that bedeckle and decorate an area and make it more visually stimulating and productive as well. Lighting. Lighting is very important in terms of the street lighting, the street poles, as well as twinkle lights that can kind of hang across parking lots or even across streets. In some areas you'll find that, which brings and ties together the whole area and gives it lots of charm. There's also facade awnings, as we saw in the prior slide. The mix of retail, of course, sanitation and public safety are very key measures as well. On top of the physicality of the environment is the activities and experiences that the different store owners or the business improvement districts or chambers of commerce are offering in the area to increase foot traffic. So when we're looking at developing our main streets in the valley, we want to encourage, and when this is appropriate and safe for public safety, encourage performances and tastings and demos and kids activities and things like that. And then third and finally is the finances, because, you know, with the abolishment of the Community Redevelopment Agency in 2011 by the California governor and legislature, there hasn't been as much investment in our urban areas and these Main Street areas. So we've seen some of the physical area declining, and depending on the city's budget with sanitation and public safety, there's, you know, different levels of support for these things. The bids are doing a great job coming alongside and augmenting what can be done. But when we have engaged property owners and business improvement districts, when we have the business owners actually owning the buildings they're occupying, and then we can take, when we can take part in facade improvement programs like the one the County of LA offers, and Reseda is doing some work in that area, then we see these main streets coming together with the resources that are needed to help with the maintenance and upkeep and the beautification that really creates what we need. So some measures of success would be consistent foot traffic, clean, attractive environments, vibrant and sustainable economies, and interpersonal connectedness. Okay, next slide, please. There we go. And so looking ahead, main streets of the future. Of course, we've had some impacts with COVID-19, which has been a blow to many businesses, and has also created some opportunities for some businesses. So in addition to the closures, the intermittent closures we've experienced, which has impacted our main streets, many businesses have been very incentivized to pivot to online shopping. And I just want to remind everyone that we can online shop local. We can still shop local online. And we have a buy local campaign that we did in the month of August, where we were promoting our Valley businesses, and we look forward to doing that again in the month of November in time for holiday shopping. But many businesses have pivoted to online shoppings. Of course, there's increased sidewalk seating, which has actually added more kind of personality and vibrancy, pulling people out of the indoors to the sidewalk, and that has activated some of our main streets in the Valley. There's been a rise in biking, moving people around spaces, so you see more folks biking. Activation of parking lots, sidewalks, parking spots, and rooftops for fitness and beauty salons and barber shops, as well as restaurants. And Department of Transportation has been more flexible about parking and relaxing some of the regulation that in the past have inhibited the growth of our main streets. So with that, before we open it up for questions, I just want to leave the participants here with a couple of calls to action, 3 calls to action. So number one, to patronize our local Main Street businesses is to shop local online. And so you can connect with our website, thevalley.net, and you can tell your local businesses that you know of to apply for the program to be featured in our social media, which then gets shared out by 100 of our business partners throughout the Alliance. So shop local online, tell your local businesses to apply for buy local campaigns, any buy local campaign, and they're welcome to participate in ours. And 3, you can lead revitalization of your local business district. We are partnering with Main Street USA, a national organization that has advocates and consultants which help lead local residents and business owners to revitalize their particular Main Street. So we, as an alliance, are going to be working with Main Street America, Main Street USA, enlisting them in helping local stakeholders to advance the work. And so I encourage you to email me at info@economicalliance.org for more information if you'd like to take part in that. And with that, I will conclude my comments and throw it back to Michael or Tito to help us understand the next step in our program.
Yeah, Sonya, thank you so much for that presentation. It was really exciting, and just that from the history of Main Streets, to just what your thoughts are for the San Fernando Valley. So I want to thank you. And just a reminder, as I stated in the beginning, what these community conversations are really just to learn more from these community stakeholders on their perspectives of what's going on in their communities. And so thank you, Sonya, for sharing a little bit about your thoughts and perspectives. I love Main Streets. In Canoga Park, as you put on there, there's been a Main Street. I remember growing up and passing the railroad tracks at one time and just walking through the businesses and then just meeting some of those antique business folks that were there, or Henry's that has been there for so long and that I still go to for breakfast. So it builds a type of rapport with the folks in the community. So I'm all about Main Street. So with that said, what we're gonna do now is, like I said in the beginning, is we're gonna open for Q&A. So if you do have a question, we ask you to raise your hand and then we'll unmute you. And so you can ask your question to Sonya. And so we also want people to know, please be respectful as well when you're asking your question. And then also know that if Sonya may not have all the answers, but she'll be able to provide you some guidance if she's able to answer the question. So we want to thank you for attending today's community conversation. So at that point, let me mute Tito and Karen, so in case they wanted to say anything before we open it to Q&A. Tito and Karen, do you want to say anything?
Thank you, Sonya. I think that was really great, and we're excited about your leadership in the San Fernando Valley. And, you know, I am a longtime Valley resident, as lots of folks here know, and so it's been interesting to see the Valley change and kind of hold together. And I love how you talk about the Valley Economic Alliance coming out of the ashes of the Northridge earthquake, and here we are again, and you've stepped into this leadership opportunity right as COVID was coming on. So, you know, I see there were just some different chatter throughout the last, 45 minutes about different parts of the Valley, and we know that, right? We know that our Valley, some communities are further along, some are kind of, a little bit lagging. Obviously, we're working in Metro on some of that. You're working on that. Lots of organizations across the Valley are trying to help that. But maybe we have a few questions we can take, Michael, that get into that, or we can take a look at a few of the things in the comments. I see a question from our Service Council member, Perry Sloan Goodman, about how VEA works with neighborhood councils and bids and other organizations. And so maybe
go with that. Yeah, that would be good to go first if you want to start with that.
Well, great. Okay, so it's all very individualized. So we work with all organizations, any ones of them that we can. So for example, with the neighborhood councils, we kind of partnered on our Buy Local campaign, since they have, access to so many of the residents who are interested in supporting and patronizing businesses. So whenever we have a campaign that's active and going, we connect with the neighborhood councils, and we want to do more of that. As Karen mentioned, I'm new to the organization. I started 6 months ago, and so we're just building those allegiances and partnerships now, and encourage everyone to reach out so that we can connect to a greater degree. So we'll work with the bids on neighborhood beautification and this commercial district revitalization. We'll work with the neighborhood councils on what can happen with our residents. We recently partnered with them also on our job fair. So we introduced a virtual job fair to help people find jobs. And so whenever we're connected with residences, we want to work with the neighborhood councils and connect them to these economic opportunities. And then we, of course, work with the bids and the chambers. The United Chambers of Commerce is one of our partner organizations, as is VICA. And so we work really closely and will be willing to work with everyone.
Great. Let me go to, I see Farah Mars. Farah Mars. Yes, I'm gonna unmute you first. Okay, you're unmuted. You can go and answer your question.
Hi, Sonya, thank you very much for this great presentation. I think it was a helpful overview for community members who are new to this topic. And I'm a longtime San Fernando Valley resident and transit rider, so seeing this conversation listed on Metro's website got me very interested. So I'd like to ask you, what might be some effective ways in engaging the local business community in advocacy around bus service? I think businesses aren't necessarily always aware of what's happening to bus service, and it can benefit businesses in several ways by providing better access for their workforce. When their workforce doesn't have to drive, that also frees up local parking for paid customers. And it also can help alleviate traffic. And it can also be a way for customers to come and patronize their businesses. And to give you one tangible example, Metro just concluded a round of public engagement around its next gen study for redesigning its bus system. And I proposed rerouting a bus on one of the corridors that you presented in pictures, the Chatsworth Boulevard corridor in Granada Hills, so that those businesses along Chatsworth Boulevard could benefit from more riders coming and working and patronizing there. So I'd just like to hear your thoughts, big picture. How can community advocates connect with and help local businesses get better bus service?
Well, I guess there's two angles from this, one from the business owner perspective and then one from the resident or the rider perspective. So from the business owner's perspective, one of the things that the Alliance can do is to fold in, when we're talking to businesses about how they're conducting their social media campaigns and their email marketing campaigns, we can encourage them to always include their transportation options. You know, there's parking options, there's transportation options, so that they can, when businesses are learning about them on their websites, through their email marketing and social media, all of those various mobility alternatives can be included in that. So that's a great one way that we can do that. And I'm open to other suggestions as well.
Great. I see a comment from Sarah. Where does the money come from to achieve these goals? Will the money be distributed fairly so communities that are in higher needs, such as Van Nuys, receive necessary funds to catch up to places like Sherman Oaks that are already walkable and beautified?
Okay. I'm just writing down from the last question so I don't forget. So on this one, very important issue, the equitable development of our region. So I think that one thought is that there's no one source of funding that is readily available to be dispatched, necessarily. And so we have to advocate for and look at all the various funding pots that may be available from the federal government, as well as from California State, and looking at the various facade improvement programs. I think it's going to take a groundswell of support from the businesses and the residents of areas to, and we will provide the research on some of the economic development programs that are available for local areas to take advantage of. That way we can at least get the information equitably spread across, and then everyone will need to apply for that funding to be able to find those investments. I think Karen had something to add there.
Yeah, and I would add, I think some people here know, but I mean, Metro is investing over $1 billion on the Van Nuys corridor as part of our light rail. So Tito's got the background behind him today. So we can follow up with you afterwards and share that information as part of this event. But I mean, that's what we're bringing to the table, and that includes Measure R and Measure M, our sales taxes, as well as SB1 gas tax funding. So those are some sources of funding for investment in the Van Nuys corridor. And then it is carefully, though, working with the local elected officials and the communities to make sure that we are right-sizing that development right, and so that it's positive. And I see we have some friends from LA City Planning's Van Nuys office here today. And so, that's another really important entity. Sonya talked about zoning. And so those are things that we want to keep, in mind as we're looking to right-size some of that equitable development. And what does that look like in terms of housing? What kind of housing is already there? And what is the complementary development? Because we're committed to transit-oriented communities. So this is part of Metro's partnership with BEA and other stakeholders in the region.
Great. Sonya, you're getting some love in the chat, so great presentation. And we will be sharing this presentation, and it is being recorded. So if you signed up via Eventbrite, you will get a follow-up, and then we can provide the Valley Economic Alliance contact information. So I do want to turn, I think Cooper had a question, and so we're going to go ahead and unmute you at this time. Cooper? You should be unmuted. Okay, go ahead. You can ask your question. Okay, I see none. Maybe we'll come back to him. I do see a question from Susan. Would you please share more information on the county's facade improvement program?
Oh, sure. Let's see, I'm trying to think of all the information that I have available on that. I know that the Madrid Theater in Reseda is one of the projects of this redevelopment. There's also plans in Councilmember Blumenfield's district for an ice skating rink and some other development along Sherman Way. And they have, I don't know the total amount of funding that they have available, but I can look real quick and put in the chat, there's an application for that, and they partner with the city of LA and other cities in the county as well at times to kind of pull together funding and leadership, and they pick a few key projects that that they believe have particular promise and economic benefit. And then they have an application process where you can get more information. Let me look in the chat. I'll put it in the chat so that you can see where you can apply.
Great. And then we got a comment from Ingracia, who's saying, what's being done with making sure that our sidewalk and streets are accessible for the disability communities to access? I think since COVID-19 has moved many businesses out on the sidewalk. So I don't know if you have any.
Yeah. So the County of LA that provides the guidance and the safer at home orders requires that 5 feet be remain available for pedestrian traffic, even when there are sidewalk seating permits issued by the various cities. And so that is the requirement to ensure that there is that protected zone. I think that there's, a lot of this is very new for businesses, of course, and they may not be aware of all of the different details. And so when you contact public health has inspectors, and they travel throughout the city and they let people know if they're not adhering to the requirements from time to time. So you do find that, but by and large that is the regulation, and by and large we're finding that businesses are trying to be conscientious about adhering to that.
Great, thank you. We do have, I think Cooper raised his hand again, so let me try this again. Cooper, you're unmuted if you want to ask your question. You are unmuted. Let's see if this, Cooper? Oh, maybe there's some technical difficulties.
You did just put something in the chat about an MTA question, safety on the MTA.
Oh, he's having a problem. Well, Sonia, I know we're already at 12:56, so any final comments that you would like to make? Again, we do appreciate you having this conversation with all of us today. I learned so much more, and then just your goals and your vision for Valley Economic Alliance. And I look forward to continuing our partnership on the Metro side of things. I know Karen and Tito are, but I hope all of you continue to engage Sonia and the Valley Economic Alliance and what they're trying to do. So thank you very much. I guess I'll let you do your final comments.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate everyone. And we want to make sure that every question gets answered and that this is just the beginning of a conversation. So, we raised some issues and some good questions, and I'm sure there are many more. So I put my contact info in the chat, and really appreciate everyone being able to get in touch to continue the conversation. And thank you so much to Metro and Karen, Michael, and Tito for inviting me today.
Great, thank you. And again, this is not, as Sonia said, is not the end of the conversations we're having. We will continue to have conversations in the San Fernando Valley, as well as many parts of the county. We did this in South LA. We did this in Little Tokyo and Chinatown, and we will continue to do these conversations throughout the county. So if you have any comments or questions or ideas for these community conversations as we move forward, please feel free to email me, and we'll add that in our follow-up email to everybody. So thank you for today, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.